We all have our expectations about life, don't we? We think we have it figured out, that we know what love, relationships, and stability should look like. But sometimes life has a way of shaking those beliefs to their core. This is one of those stories. A seemingly ordinary morning turned into something I never could have imagined. I'm 54 years old, and for most of my life, I truly believed I had everything figured out. I got married at 22, devoted myself to raising 2 children, kept a clean house, and stuck to the rules society had laid out for me. In my experience, love had always been steady and predictable, never the kind of whirlwind we see in movies. I used to think those transformative, life-altering moments were reserved for stories, not real life. Certainly not mine. But last week, something happened that shattered all of that. And it all began on a regular Thursday morning while I stood in my kitchen, still in my night clothes, barefoot on the cold tiles, with traces of yesterday's makeup under my eyes. I never thought something like this would ever happen to me. Don't make the same mistake I did. It was one of those overcast mornings, the kind where the entire house feels wrapped in a weight. The air itself seemed heavy. The rain tapped steadily against the windows, urging you to pull the blankets up and forget the outside world. I was in faded cotton pajamas and a cozy, oversized sweatshirt from my daughter's college days. The fabric had softened from years of washing. I hadn't planned on seeing anyone that day. The house was completely still. I was in the middle of folding laundry, sipping on my second cup of tea, when there was an unexpected knock at the front door. At first, I thought it might be a package delivery. I peered through the peephole, and there he was, my son, Ethan. Now, you need to understand something about Ethan, Ma. He's 32, lives across town with his partner, and rarely shows up without warning. He's always been thoughtful, the type of person who texts before calling. So seeing him standing there, drenched from the rain, with nothing but his phone in his hand and a troubled look on his face, completely caught me off guard. I opened the door right away. "Ethan, what's going on? Are you okay?" I asked, my concern flooding my voice. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said, his voice strained. I needed to see you. Do you have time to talk?" Course, come in," I said quickly, stepping aside. "You're soaked through." He crossed the threshold, brushing water off his jacket. I couldn't miss how tense he seemed, his shoulders stiff and his jaw tight, like he was holding something back. It was strange. He didn't even take off his shoes, which was so unlike him. I shut the door behind him and motioned toward the living room couch. "I was just folding towels," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "Hey, please, ignore the mess." He gave a half smile but sat down, and it was clear this wasn't just a casual visit. I went into the kitchen, grabbed his favorite mug, filled it with fresh tea, and walked back in my nightclothes, hair uncombed, slippers making soft sounds on the floor. I sat across from him, waiting. The rain continued to drum against the window as the silence stretched between us. Finally, he looked up. His eyes were different now, softer, but there was turbulence in them. "Mom," he said carefully, "I had a huge argument with Elena." "Oh," I replied, genuinely surprised. "Is everything okay between you two?" No," he sighed, his voice heavy. "Not really." "I'm not sure if I'm going back." Those words hit me harder than I expected. Ethan and Elena had been together for nearly 7 years. She'd become a part of our family. He rubbed his hands together nervously, fidgeting. "What happened?" I asked gently, leaning forward. "It's complicated," he said, hesitation in his voice. "We keep having the same fights over and over. I needed space. I needed someone who really understands me." The way he said that last part made me stop. There was a vulnerability in his expression, something I'd never seen before. Almost like a child asking permission to be weak. He'd always been so composed, so proper. But in that moment, he was just my son, exposed and looking for comfort. I reached out instinctively and placed my hand over his. "You'll always have a place here, Ethan, no matter what." He didn't speak right away. He just looked at my hand on his, then back at me. And in that moment, something shifted. Something subtle but powerful. The atmosphere between us was charged, almost like the stillness before a summer storm. That moment, right then, changed everything. I wish I could say I pulled my hand back, cracked a joke, stood up, and offered him the guest room, like I'd always done. But I didn't. I stayed there, holding his hand, feeling emotions I hadn't let myself feel in years. There was a flicker in Ethan's eyes, a mix of hesitation and maybe guilt, but also something deeper, like he was recognizing something we both had buried for a long time. I slowly pulled my hand back, trying to regain my composure. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "For what?" he asked softly. "For letting things become so unclear," I said, knowing I wasn't just talking about him. He studied me carefully, the way he used to when he was little and scared to tell the truth. "I'm not unclear," he said, his voice steady now. "Mom, I get it. You always were the strong one." The word Mom anchored me again. It grounded me in who I was, in what I had to be. I stood quickly smoothing my sweatshirt, suddenly aware of how unkempt I appeared. "Maybe you just need rest," I said, heading for the laundry basket. "I'll get the guest room ready." But he stayed seated, still holding his mug like it was the only thing keeping him steady. "Do you ever feel like you're just living the life everyone expected of you?" he asked, his voice low. The question froze me. I turned around. "Yes," I said quietly. "I do." He leaned forward, his voice softer now. "Alina said I'm too much like you," he began, making me freeze again. "Like me?" I asked, my voice sharp with surprise. "She said I suppress things, that I'm too cautious, too measured, and that I never really allow myself to want what I truly want." I sat down again, my heart thumping. "Is she right?" he asked, looking at me intently. "I was the same," I said slowly. "I followed the rules, always afraid of disappointing anyone. Your father and I, we made it work for a long time, but it wasn't because of passion. It was because of stability. It was because of stability. Predictability. Safety." Ethan's expression softened. "I never realized you felt that way." "Why, never showed it," I replied. That was the problem. I got so good at pretending everything was fine. I forgot what being truly happy even felt like." Ethan absorbed my words, his eyes reflecting a silent understanding. "That's how I feel with Elena," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Like I'm just playing a role for her. Like I'm the version she needs me to be, but not who I really am." "Then maybe you need to find out who you really are," I said softly, "and not who you think you should be." There was a long silence between us. He finally asked, his voice shaky. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," I replied, waiting. "When you divorced Dad, were you relieved or terrified?" It took me a moment to process that question. It was both, terrified of the unknown, but relieved at the same time. "I left because staying would have destroyed whatever was left of me," I said quietly. Ethan's eyes glistened. "I don't want to disappear either," he said softly. "Then don't," I said firmly. "Even if it means making hard choices, even if it means disappointing people, even if it means not having all the answers right away." He reached for my hand again, this time deliberately, not as a child, but as someone who needed connection. "Thank you," he said simply. We sat together in that silence, both of us feeling what we'd never said aloud before. Eventually, I stood and moved to the kitchen. "You must be hungry," I said. "Let me make something." He followed me, and we worked side by side, comfortable in the quiet. I made soup while he sliced bread, the rain still steady outside. We ate at the small table, the only sounds the rain and the clinking of our spoons. "After I left Alina," Ethan said quietly, "I thought I'd feel more certain. But I don't. I just feel untethered." "I know," I said softly. It's hard to walk away from something that seemed right, especially when you don't know what's next. Ethan looked at me, really looked at me, and asked, "That's how you felt with Dad, right?" I swallowed hard, my breath catching. "Yes," I whispered. I knew it was over long before I left, but the idea of unraveling everything we had terrified me. So I stayed, until staying started to feel like vanishing. Ethan's eyes softened. "You were never invisible to me," he said, his voice thick. His words hit me harder than I could have prepared for. "I always thought you were the strongest person I knew," he added quietly. "But maybe I never realized how much it cost you." I blinked away the sudden sting in my eyes. "It cost me more than I ever acknowledged," I admitted softly. "And now, I don't even know who I am without holding everything together for everyone else." Ethan reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine gently, not with urgency, but with quiet understanding. "Maybe it's okay not to have it all figured out," he said. "Maybe just being here together is enough for now." I didn't say anything in response. I simply let his hand rest over mine, allowing myself to feel the warmth, the connection, the quiet understanding. I miss feeling close to people, I admitted, my voice threatening to break. Not the kind of closeness that's all smiles for the camera or at family gatherings, but the real kind, the kind where you're actually seen. Ethan's gaze never left mine. "You're seen right now," he said. In that moment I felt it. We both did. That bridge between us built from years of shared history, unspoken wounds and silent strengths. Eventually, I rose and motioned down the hallway. "Come with me," I said. Ethan hesitated but followed. We didn't speak as we walked to my bedroom. I opened the door, the soft light from the bedside lamp casting a warm glow. I pulled back the covers and slipped beneath them, facing the wall. A few moments later, I felt the bed shift as Ethan lay down behind me, fully clothed, maintaining that respectful distance. It wasn't conventional, but there was no shame in it, no guilt. Just two people, connected in a way that didn't need to be explained. And as I closed my eyes, I realized something profound. Connection doesn't always look like what we expect. It doesn't always fit neatly into a box. But when it's real, when it's genuine, it's enough. I didn't dream that night. I simply breathed, and that, for once, was enough. When the morning sun filtered in through the curtains, I opened my eyes and took a moment to remember where I was and who was lying next to me. Ethan was already awake, staring at the ceiling. There was a heaviness in his expression that I knew too well, the kind that settles in after an emotional night. "Good morning," I whispered. He smiled faintly. "A morning? A morning?" We lingered in the quiet, then he sat up slowly, rubbing his neck. "I should go," he said, his voice low. I nodded, propping myself up. "You don't have to rush." "I know," he said, "but I think I need to face Elena, the apartment, everything. He stood, his back to me. The weight of the night, the vulnerability, the comfort, the confusion, hung in the air like a heavy mist. "I want to thank you," he said without turning around, "for last night, for just being here. You didn't make it easy." I teased. He cheesed. He chuckled, turning to face me. "I never do." I stood and crossed the room, wrapping my robe tighter around myself. I put a hand on his arm. "Whatever happens next," I said softly, "remember it's okay to be uncertain. Life doesn't come with instructions. We just figure it out one messy step at a time." He nodded, his gaze searching mine. "I've been terrified of making mistakes, of choosing the wrong path," he admitted. "We all are," I said. "But sometimes the wrong choice teaches you more than staying still ever could." For a moment I saw it in his eyes, the flicker of recognition. That's softness, that's Storm. He embraced me then, not as a child, but as someone simply grateful to be understood. "I'll call you later," he said, his voice steady now. "Please do," I said with a smile. Ethan gathered his things and headed toward the door. I watched him leave, the morning light catching in his hair, making him look for just a moment like the little boy I used to chase around the yard. And then, just like that, he was gone. I sat down on the sofa, cradling my tea. The house was quiet again, but it no longer felt hollow. Last night had awakened something in me, a reminder of how deeply human we all are, how much we carry inside without sharing it, how rare it is to find someone who won't judge you for it. There were no simple labels for what had happened between us, no neat explanations. It wasn't about crossing boundaries or breaking rules. It was about feeling safe, feeling seen, feeling real. And maybe that's the lesson here, that no matter where we are in life, whether it's at 54 or beyond, we're all still discovering what connection really means. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's quiet, but when it's genuine, it's enough. I stood, opened the window, and let the fresh air touch my face. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to hold everything together. I just felt open, alive, and maybe, just maybe that's everything.